Introduction. A Second Life Begins. Volume 1 opens with the idea of a broken life being replaced by a new one. A man who wasted his first life dies and awakens in a completely different world, where magic, family, and childhood give him one more chance to become someone better. The new world feels bright and unfamiliar compared to the darkness of his previous life. This contrast is important because the story is not simply about reincarnation, it is about whether a person can truly change when given another beginning. From the very start, the countryside around the Greyret home feels peaceful and almost dreamlike. This peaceful setting becomes the foundation of Rudius's childhood and the place where his new identity begins to form. The opening mood also carries quiet fear. Rudius remembers his old failures, so even a beautiful world does not instantly erase his emotional wounds. He has to grow slowly, step by step. By the end of the introduction, the story promises a long journey. Volume 1 is not about grand wars yet. It is about the small early moments that create the person Rudius will become. Event 1. Reborn as Rudius Greyret. Rudius is born into the Greyret family and slowly realizes that he has become a baby in a fantasy world. He cannot speak or move properly yet, but his adult memories remain, making his infancy strange, funny, and emotionally complicated. Paul and Zenith become his new parents. Their warmth gives Rudius something he lacked emotionally in his previous life, a family environment where he is cared for from the very beginning. Even as a baby, Rudius observes everything carefully. His inner awareness makes him different from an ordinary child, but his body still forces him to experience helplessness, like everyone else. The house itself becomes a safe world around him. Every sound, face, and room teaches him about this new life before he can even participate in it properly. This event establishes the core emotional idea of the volume. Rudius is not just reborn physically, he is being given the chance to rebuild his heart from childhood onward. Event 2. Early curiosity and learning. As Rudius grows, his curiosity becomes obvious. He starts reaching for books, listening to conversations, and trying to understand the language, customs, and structure of the world around him. His memories give him an advantage, but the process still requires effort. Learning to move, read, and communicate reminds him that a second chance does not mean instant success. Books become one of his first doors into the world. Through reading, he begins to understand magic, history, geography, and the idea that this new world has its own rules. The more he learns, the more serious he becomes about not wasting this life. His early studies are small, but they show his determination to live differently from before. This section shows the foundation of Rudius's growth. Before battles, friendships, or school, his transformation begins with curiosity and discipline inside a quiet home. Event 3. Discovering magic. Rudius discovers magic and becomes fascinated by it. Unlike ordinary children, he approaches it with study, repetition, and experimentation, quickly realizing that this power may become his path to changing himself. Water magic becomes one of his first clear breakthroughs. The moment is exciting because it turns fantasy from something he observes into something he can actually do with his own hands. He practices in secret and pushes himself constantly. His adult mind helps him understand theory, while his young body allows him to build mana capacity from an early age. Magic also gives him confidence. In his previous life, he ran away from society, but here he finds something he can work hard at and improve through effort. By the end of this event, Rudius's talent is undeniable. The family begins to understand that this child is not normal, and his future will require special guidance. Event 4. His talent becomes impossible to ignore. Rudius's magic grows so quickly that his parents can no longer treat it as a small childhood trick. His ability creates pride, surprise, and concern because they know he needs a proper teacher. Paul and Zenith begin discussing what to do with him. The mood is loving, but also practical. If Rudius has extraordinary talent, then ordinary parenting will not be enough. Rudius himself starts realizing that talent carries expectations. He wants to grow, but the attention also makes him aware that people are watching his future take shape. The idea of hiring a tutor becomes the turning point. This decision will bring Roxy into the household and change Rudius's life far beyond magic lessons. This event matters because it moves Rudius from self-study to mentorship. He is no longer learning alone. Soon, someone from the wider world will enter his small home. Event 5. Roxy arrives as his teacher. Roxy arrives at the Greyret home as Rudius's magic tutor. To Rudius, she represents the first real connection to the outside world beyond his family and village. At first, Rudius is impressed by her knowledge and magical skill. Roxy is young-looking, but her confidence and discipline make her feel like a true master to him. Their lessons begin with basic instruction, but they quickly become emotionally important. Roxy teaches him not only magic, but also how people live, travel, and study beyond the walls of his home. Roxy's presence gives Rudius structure. He learns to respect effort, patience, and formal training instead of relying only on raw talent. This event begins one of the most important teacher-student relationships in Rudius's life. Roxy becomes the person who helps him step toward the world. Event 6. Training under Roxy. Roxy trains Rudius seriously, and their lessons gradually become more advanced. She tests his control, teaches him formal spell use, and helps him understand that magic requires both imagination and discipline. The training gives Rudius a sense of progress. Every lesson becomes a visible step away from the helplessness of his past and toward the kind of life he wants to build. Roxy is also patient in ways Rudius needs. She corrects him, challenges him, and treats him as a student rather than a miracle child who can simply do anything. Through these lessons, Rudius begins to respect Roxy deeply. His admiration is not only because she is powerful, but because she helps him become stronger without letting him become careless. By the end of this training section, Rudius is no longer just a talented child. He is a young mage with a real foundation, and Roxy has become one of his greatest influences. Event 7. The Water Saint Test and Roxy's departure. Rudius eventually proves his ability with a powerful water spell, reaching a level that confirms how far he has come under Roxy's guidance. The test is not only about strength, it shows control, confidence, and the result of disciplined study, making it one of the first clear milestones in Rudius's new life. Roxy recognizes that she has taught him what she can at this stage. Her departure becomes bittersweet because she has become more than a hired tutor. Before leaving, Roxy gives Rudius both knowledge and confidence. She has helped him believe that the outside world is reachable rather than terrifying. This farewell is emotional because it marks the end of Rudius's first guided chapter. His teacher leaves, but the courage she gave him remains. Event 8. Overcoming fear of the outside world. One of Roxy's biggest impacts is helping Rudius leave the house. This is important because his fear of the outside world is connected to the trauma of his previous life. At first, stepping outside is not easy. The open road may look peaceful, but emotionally it represents the world he once avoided completely. Rudius slowly realizes that this new world is not the same as the one that rejected him before. Every step outside becomes part of his healing. The village, fields, and roads begin to feel less threatening. Rudius starts seeing the world as something to explore instead of something to hide from. This event is one of the emotional victories of Volume 1. Magic made him stronger, but leaving the house proves that he is changing inside too. Event 9. Sword training with Paul. Paul trains Rudius in swordsmanship, giving him a very different kind of challenge from magic. Unlike spells, sword practice forces Rudius to confront his physical limits directly. Paul is rough, confident, and sometimes difficult, but his training gives Rudius balance. He does not want his son to become only a mage who cannot protect himself up close. Rudius struggles with physical training more than magical study. This contrast keeps him humble and shows that talent in one area does not solve everything. The training also develops the father-son relationship. Paul may not always be wise, but he does care about shaping Rudius into someone capable. By the end of this event, Rudius has started building both magical and physical discipline. Volume 1 uses this contrast to show that growth must happen in more than one direction. Event 10. Rudius saves Sylphie. Rudius meets a bullied child named Sylphie and steps in to help. This moment matters because it is one of the first times he uses his new life to protect someone else. The bullying scene reveals Sylphie's loneliness and vulnerability. Rudius sees someone being treated unfairly and chooses not to stay passive. After helping Sylphie, Rudius begins to understand that friendship is not just about admiration or convenience. It can begin with kindness at the right moment. Sylphie responds to Rudius with trust and relief. Their bond starts quietly, but it becomes one of the most important relationships of his childhood. This event shows Rudius taking another step away from his old self. Instead of hiding from people, he reaches out and changes someone else's life. Event 11. Friendship and magic lessons with Sylphie. Rudius and Sylphie become close friends, and Rudius begins teaching Sylphie magic. Their relationship gives both of them comfort, confidence, and a sense of belonging. For Sylphie, Rudius becomes the person who accepts and encourages her. For Rudius, Sylphie becomes proof that he can build a real friendship in this new life. Their magic practice is gentle and joyful compared to Rudius's intense lessons with Roxy. It turns learning into something shared rather than lonely. The household begins to feel warmer with Sylphie around. The friendship affects not only the children, but also the atmosphere of the Greyrat home. At night, Rudius reflects on how much his life has changed. He now has a friend, a family, and a future he wants to protect. Event 12. The family crisis. The peaceful household is shaken by a serious family crisis involving Paul, Zenith, and Lilia. This event reveals that the Grey Rat home is loving, but not perfect. Paul's mistake creates pain and anger. The scene is uncomfortable because Rudius is still a child in this world, but his adult mind understands how serious the conflict is. Zenith's hurt becomes the emotional center of the crisis. The story does not treat the situation lightly, because trust inside the family has been damaged. Lilia's position is also painful and complicated. She is not simply an outsider, she is part of the household, and the crisis forces everyone to decide what kind of family they will be. This event matures the tone of Volume 1. Rudius learns that family love can include mistakes, forgiveness, shame, and difficult choices. Event 13. Reconciliation and new sisters. The family slowly moves toward reconciliation, and the birth of two girls changes the household again. Norn and Aisha become new parts of Rudius's life. The emotional recovery is not instant. The adults must live with what happened, but they choose to keep the family together and move forward. Rudius watches the household change and begins to understand responsibility in a deeper way. Family is no longer simple warmth, it is also compromise and protection. The arrival of babies brings a new softness after the tension. The family is scarred, but also growing, which makes the outcome bittersweet rather than purely happy. This event prepares Rudius for separation. His childhood home is changing, and soon he will be pushed into a wider world beyond the village. Event 14. Leaving home for Roa. Paul decides that Rudius needs to leave home and work as a tutor in Roa. The decision is painful because it separates Rudius from Sylphie, but it is meant to help him grow independently. The journey away from the village feels like the real beginning of the larger world. Roads, carriages, and distant cities replace the safe circle of his childhood home. As Rudius approaches Roa, the scale of society becomes clearer. Nobles, city gates, and new expectations await him, and he must adapt quickly. Their arrival at the Boreas household introduces a very different environment from the Grey Rat home. Rudius is stepping into a world of status, discipline, and danger. This event ends Volume 1 Childhood Foundation by sending Rudius outward. The boy who once feared the outside world now has to live in it. Conclusion. The foundation of Rudius's new life. Volume 1 closes by showing how much Rudius has changed. He has learned magic, gained a teacher, found a friend, faced family problems, and finally stepped beyond the home that once protected him. The final movement toward Roa hints at the next stage of the story. New people, new conflicts, and a much harsher world are waiting for him outside the village. Rudius is still flawed, awkward, and shaped by his previous life, but he is no longer frozen by it. The volume shows him beginning to act, learn, and connect with others. The childhood arc matters because it gives emotional weight to everything that comes later. Roxy, Sylphie, Paul, Zenith, Lilia, Norn, and Aisha all leave marks on the person Rudius becomes. By the end, Volume 1 feels like the true start of a second life. Rudius has not become perfect, but for the first time, he is genuinely trying to live.